You know, a lot of times when I hang out with I'm a 2000, quote unquote, I'm baffled but also impressed by this seemingly boundless net of influence that they have towards Americanized culture. Like, I'm a millennial, so I grew up in this era where I loved what was on TV, but it had a grip with where I was living as a young black boy. The dusty streets of Motherwell, Port Elizabeth were my constraint to filtering how pop culture imposed itself on me. And what I think is the difference between people like myself, that's early to late millennials, and the now generation, is that they seem to be totally living in this place where their mind is embedded in the technology that they use. The discourse that they have with life is on Twitter and not with Amakhudmani in the street. The idea they have of a beautiful person, be it a girl or a boy, or the beautiful thing that lurks in between gender, is based on the dialogue of what they see on social media, more so than actually feeling, touching, and listening and observing real people in real time, in real life. So as a result, I'm always going to be this old guy who hampers on the hyper-real dreams of the generation Y, because it seems as if they just totally don't get the fact that the air of the internet might be driving us to the world, but the world means America. America literally thinks they're the world, guys. Like, they think the world is a synonym for them, because to a certain extent culturally it is. The way that culture and industry has manifested itself in capitalism is an American invention. How we do ads, how we wear our clothes, how we structure our cities and buildings, it's all something that has emerged from this neo-Euro-American lifestyle. So as a result, they have a point. That's why in every movie, when some extinction level event is about to happen and it's about to end the whole world, it's in New York City or some shit. And that's the whole world. And you're there thinking, okay, that's the whole world. So, what am I talking about? Interesting rapper from Pretoria, name is Z, has this flair that feels so dreamy and overcast in these colors that are hopeful and bathed in a sound that is woozy and effortless, but is totally, again, anchored in the hyperreal. It's not connected to anything that is actually about the collective engagement with the country that we inhabit, with the continent that we inhabit. Africa is going through so many things that younger rappers are ignoring because they don't live or engage with these things. They'd rather engage with the news on social media. They'd rather engage with the slang on social media. And what it does is that it has created this dissonance that makes the art appeal to a global feel but alienate itself from the South African reality. Z's latest project, titled SAMO, is literally a direct lift from one of my favorite artists. Jean-Michel Basquiat was a black artist from New York whose use of experimental primal colors and shapes that somehow echo back into ancient Africa while kind of reflecting dark disdain and expression of the urban industrial complex were manifested in the form of cubist-like images, which still had this playful, primal, child aura about them. If you don't know Basquiat, I don't know where you've been. Google him and you'll see an amazing artist whose life was arguably upended prematurely by the capitalist rush that comes with success when you have not understood your orientation as a person and your identity. And I think Basquiat was overtaken by what happens when you're young and still trying to find yourself, and the system grabs you with everything you've ever wanted. The money, the power, the glory, the woman, and you are overwhelmed by so much of what you want that you forget what you really need. And because of that, his young life becomes a living legacy for artists in general. Basquiat's hairstyle is something that has influenced artists as big as Jay-Z, the free-from dreadlocks, the almost unkempt fashion style, the walking in the middle of urban big centers of city and influence, looking like part hobo, part hipster, was the claim to fame that Basquiat had to his cultural allure. So I understand that when a South African kid names his own project after Basquiat's first alias, because he started with graffiti tagging the word SAMO on different corners of New York City, which again was a reference to the idea of, yo, what's happening right now? You know, same old, the same old things. This pattern of capitalist reproduction is what Basquiat was depicting through the idea of SAMO, and it's something that is carried through in this project to a very beautiful extent. The beats here are psychedelic. In other words, this is stoner raps. If you're not into any kind of ecstatic drugs, you're not going to enjoy this project a lot. It forces you to live in that world because it's completely unhinged. Z himself raps in this kind of nasal drawl where he slips into melody and raps that kind of feel breath in, breath out. He's reminds me a lot of an early Chance the Rapper with his eccentricities and his interesting flip backs and flows and how he aims for the erratic and the energetic and the electrical. But his artistic limitation is the fact that his melodies are really narrow. I mean, at some point, the hooks feel like a loop that's not really saying much, because when you listen to the lyrics, it's kind of like superficial banter about his own sense of greatness looming into this aspirational quality to be heard and understood. And he's not saying it in the most poignant way. He's not using distinct, vivid imagery. He's not using any kind of structural skill. He's kind of telling a stream of consciousness story, which feels good, again, if you are in a place that doesn't allow you to think too much about it. The music is woozy to a point where it can easily become too tired if you're focused on something that has structural integrity. If I could compare this project to something, it would literally be like jumping in a pool of goo. It doesn't have the fluidity of water in a river. It feels sticky. It feels like you're trapped in a place where you're basically just moving around the same kind of gel. And this gel is this, again, obsession with experimentation, street art, and drugs. And I feel like this open, young, youthy lifestyle is something to appreciate. There's a part in all of our lives where we seek the rebellious urge of what society deems as locked or contained, and we, youthful people, jump into a place that seems to have no rules. But I think there is no such reality. There are subtle principles that govern every landscape, and I think what makes this project drown out in a place that doesn't get to excellence is that the melodies are too simple. It drags more than it drops, and so as a result, even the shining points like track number 3, the title track, SAMO, with the oozy moaning sample that creates a soul, while Z and Tyson kind of jump into this back and forth banter about where they are in life right now, and the track Burgundy with its warm bassy soul sample loop over kind of Tyson bellowing out his pain, and the track Bad Girls, which is like this kind of shy yet flirty aspirational ode to the girls that he loves, and is again trapped in these narrow hooks which don't allow for the hypnotic effect of this project to feel broader than this limited capacity of a psychedelic world that it's trying to depict. And it kind of just feels like a bad high. And maybe it was made during a bad high. I'm being serious. It feels like a cloud of weed, smoke, and ecstasy. And those are not things that carry us through life in general. And maybe it's quaint. Maybe it's even cute to listen to a young artist experimenting with themselves with this lifestyle. Probably Z doesn't even use drugs, but the attitude is very drug-esque. It's really catered towards escape more than it is groundedness. So as a result, it takes you, or at least it claims to want to take you somewhere, but when you jump into bathing in the sonic scope of this project, you're just lost in nowhere. And you feel disappointed because you had very high hopes that these colors and this magic and these flows would go somewhere significant because they feel like they have the potential to, but because it's not anchored by any strong values, any real cultural insight, any real structural artistic skill, it just doesn't go anywhere significant. So as a result, it's one of those projects that feel punchy when you listen to it in the span of an hour to 2 hours, but you'll really have to kind of fast from it for a long period of time for you to not get bored and even irritated with this sound. Because again, it's a fever haze, it's just a moment, and it's a glimmer. It's a very transient glimmer. In other words, it's very forgettable. It's like kissing your crush and realizing it was all a dream. So as a result, I'd like to say to Z, because of that potential that is just so present in many of these aspects of how he uses his vocal tone, work on the structural integrity of it. It's all good to have the idea of a home, but without the foundation and really structuring out the truss and the elements that hold this thing together throughout the waves and the winds, you will create a structure that will break down. And I feel like that's what this project does. It breaks down in the face of what it could be. So as a result, for me, it's really a 4 out of 10. It doesn't even get to the place of average because it carries so much promise that by the time you get to it, you're utterly disappointed by the fact that it didn't go somewhere significant. And what do I mean by significant? It doesn't clarify what motivates it and where it has stopped. Every artist takes you somewhere, and Z took us absolutely nowhere. He kind of just took us in circles, and as a result, you don't know much about him, you don't know much about what makes him tick. All you know is there's colors, there's love, there's hate, and as to where all of this is directed to, beats me. So art does have an edge that strikes the great from the not great by being harnessed by its intention and understanding how to get to a place that clarifies its own motives. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. Let's get our shit together.